Signing on the air, this is the new Z100.
New York City was an impossibly saturated media market.
That was the dream. Hear your song coming out of the radio.
And it was really like this communal experience.
I didn't like New York radio at the time. It was uninspiring and it was ready for a takeover.
And then came Scott Shannon.
Live from the Penthouse Studio, a flamethrower.
Scott came in not knowing anything about New York City.
They started at the very bottom of the barrel.
We were in last effing place. We suck.
I almost fell out of my chair. No one ever says you're doing poorly in radio.
We're going from worst to first. We need your help.
He recruited the audience to build our audience.
Z100 became the biggest thing in New York radio.
From the top of the Empire State Building.
Everybody broadcast from the top of the Empire State Building.
That is Scott's marketing genius.
The reach of Z100 was felt from coast to coast.
Made me feel like I had the freedom to do really experimental projects.
Z100 was a renaissance, musical culture in the city.
Mr. James Brown!
Z100.
Wait a second. Did Scott Shannon create Z100?
That's why I'm doing the movie now. Boom, and you're in it.
Holy shit.
Hey there! Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to Big Blend Radio with Nancy and Lisa, publishers of Big Blend magazines. Today we are welcoming Emmy-nominated filmmaker Mitchell-Stuart. We've heard good things about him.
Yes,
He's joining us to talk about his new documentary film, Worst to First, the true story of Z100 New York. You've got to watch it. It is out on cable and VOD Friday, February 11th, and it is an incredible story of beating the odds. You can also go to gunpowdersky.com to learn more. But welcome to the show. Mitchell, how are you doing?
Very good. Thank you so much for having me today.
Hey, this was such a cool documentary. Last night, Nancy and I watched it, and Worst to First, I mean, I've got to say,
amazing.
It was an incredible story. And Scott Shannon, you know, how he took this and really ran with his audience and went like, oh crap, we're worst. We've got to go to Worst to First immediately. And he didn't seem to have any shame about it, you know?
He was one of the first legit shock jocks, if you think about it. He went on the air, took no prisoners, especially in New York. He had hardly ever been to New York when he did this. He came because it was basically on his list of things he had to do, go conquer New York. And he went to literally this little station in Secaucus, New Jersey. And for those who don't know Secaucus, New Jersey, it's where Jimmy Hoffa probably resides at the moment. And he went literally to the swamps and they took on the biggest Goliaths in the era of radio and media. So if you think about New York at the time, it was Don Imus, and he was a legend. It was the William B. Williams of the world. It was the Gamblings of the world. And then there was the heartthrob, Jim Kerr at PLJ, who was all of like probably 21 and, you know, stunningly good looking, could have been in a boy band. And here comes Scott, who they referred to as the hillbilly from Tampa.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. From Florida. Yeah. I mean, here he goes up the East Coast, does this, but recruits his audience to like really go out and market for him. And I think he also, you know, he chose musicians that also appreciated him, I think, and they also helped him get out there.
Think about some of the people that are in the film that are very similar to Scott. John Bon Jovi was from New Jersey, was sweeping the floors of a recording studio. Think about Madonna, who comes from out of town to come to what she says in the clip we have in the film, to the center of the universe, Times Square. And, you know, these were people that took no prisoners to get where they wanted to go. Debbie Gibson, who was just a kid, who was, you know, banging on every door. Taylor Dayne, who when we met was just a blow away person, dynamic personality. She was in the clubs in Long Island. All these people, what they have in common.
Joan Jett. Gotta give it. Joan Jett, come on.
Joan Jett, the ultimate take no prisoner. They all came, and with her business partner, her manager, Kenny Laguna, all these people are one of a kind. And all these people were going to do their thing no matter what, come hell or high water. And, they found an audience because they demanded to find an audience. And that's what Scott did. And they all did it by telling their own truths. And that's like from myself as a documentarian and our team, those are stories you want to tell. Those are inspiring stories.
Sometimes you put yourself in a predicament where you really have no choice. You better make good on it. You really better make good on what you said you're going to do, because if you don't, then what happens to you?
Well, Nancy, that's a great point. All these people had no plan B. And one of the chapters in the film, we said no plan B. Scott came and this was it. All these people came. There was no choice. I think especially with an art form, if you're an artist, this is not going to be an easy road, no matter what. Right. And those that make it, funny enough, this guy, Don McLeod, who first introduced me to Z100, told me, not knowing that my company had just started and was not stable. And, my wife and I were thinking about how we're going to get it through. And he said to me, you ever think about the fact that if people didn't give up, they kept trying, maybe 5 minutes from now, they get the call that would change their life.
Exactly.
And that's what you have to do. I mean, you have to do it. And by the way, 2 years after Don told me that, he called me and said, hey, I want you to meet Z100.
No way. See, I was going to ask, how did this happen? That's awesome.
So in about 2003, I got the call. Z100 was in their own, after Scott Shannon left, they went their fallow period, and they were trying to rediscover their brand. And so they were in their own worst moment. And of course, that's when they come to me. So I was asked to go work with them on a Z100's Jingle Ball. And, being a former punk musician and let's just say attitudinal musician, I said, I don't even really know what Z100 is, pop music. Oh, I'm sure it's going to be not really this or that. It's not going to be my cup of tea, but I get to go backstage at the Garden. So I had no choice, but I'm going.
Yeah.
And when I got there, a funny thing happened with my presumptions. The people behind Z100, Tom Pullman, Sharon Daster, and such, were phenomenal music people. They cared about music just as much as I like to think I do. They had no plan Bs. They had come from Texas. They come from here, gone to Texas, came back, and started this station when it was at the worst moment in its history since Scott left. And I was so impressed by their love of music and love of communicating. And then the other, you can't turn down, you can't ignore moment was, you have not lived until you've walked into a Z100 Jingle Ball concert. Because I'm sure for people like us, it's the closest thing we will ever come to Beatlemania. Your eardrums are pierced by 19,000 screaming kids in the world's most famous arena, the Garden, Madison Square Garden. And you look at the kids and they're so joyful and so in love with the moment. And you say, this is their reality. This is their moment. And they love music. So you get swept up in wow, what can I do to really help get music, loving of music out to people? And so that's what happened to me when I was looking the other way,
Well, I think there's also something really great about this story. I want to talk about New Jersey in a little bit, but we travel full time. And whenever we're going through places, we hit the radio dial. What's new? I know we're supposed to be doing podcasts and series and all of that stuff, but we want to know what's going on in the neighborhoods, that we're driving through. And we're up in the panhandle of Texas today, speaking of that. But in some areas you get the local stuff and people are actually curating the music, but majority of radio now are these playlists that have been bought, and you could cross over the county line and all of a sudden the playlist starts again on another station. And I think what's so important about this is it's a piece of music history for sure. It's a radio history, but it's also this is what we need this. We need this shit back. We need these radio stations like that now, because I mean, he cared about the music. He was like, who's coming on? I mean, to me, it was all about the music. And right now, in majority across America, we've lost it. We've lost that sense of care. And it's the same songs over and over. We heard Hotel California 4 times yesterday. In a 5-hour drive. I mean, it happens every single day. We get in the car, we put it is on. I do not hate Hotel California, but I'm starting to really get tired of it now. I need a new flavor.
Annoying. It's annoying now.
But so Z100, we need Z100s across the country. I'm just saying.
I'll give you a different perspective, because technology is a funny thing, right? If you don't embrace it, you're a relic of the past.
Yeah. You're gone.
And full disclosure, I don't work in radio. I'm a filmmaker. I've had my own advertising agency, right? But in knowing how to tell brand stories, you have to look at the brand and see what they're about, right? And so if you think about it, right, there is that great love of music in these different companies by the people who select the music. And where radio is, what is radio today is they've evolved into, well, you could hear Hotel California, but if you go on Sirius or what have you, you can pick any station you want. So if it's blues, if it's African music, it's reggae, you have the greatest assortment ever, it's still radio. And if you need that local touch, which of course what we grew up in with radio, well, then when you go to Z100 and you go to the morning show, right? And you go to Elvis Duran, who inherited essentially the morning show from Scott, once or 2 times removed. Elvis is on there doing what Scott did. Elvis is on there talking about himself and sharing his own life and his own honesty, bringing in a bunch of characters around him that are as diverse as you can be. And they're all just telling their own truths. And now that locality of that one-to-one relationship with Elvis and his group, the great thing about technology, with the morning show at Z100 is you could have that even anywhere. If you're living in New York, or you could have that anywhere. So it's all how the prism I think you look it through. So I embrace all platforms. Look, I would love to, people talk about our doc, right? Worst to First, the true story of Z100 New York. And could I have made, the first cut was 4 hours, but when you're cutting a film, a doc, right, you don't get to do that. You want it to move quickly. You have to tell the story, and you have to be aware of how consumers consume media. So it does move fast, because if it didn't, you wouldn't be excited about it.
It did move fast. Yeah. And everybody was exciting. It's like, and Scott Shannon, oh my God, he's just like a live wire. I mean, his attitude, he's like this bombshell that just comes in and you're like, damn, this is
who he is.
He's on fire. But there's something about New Jersey, I was thinking like all these musicians, and then John Suzuka.
Hold on 1 second.
No problem. It's Zoom. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
And John Suzuka. Yes.
Yeah, he managed Metallica, and he was like the godfather of metal music. All started from selling vinyl, almost going bankrupt, him and his wife, and they needed to make money, and they went and sold their vinyl collection, and they had all this European vinyl that they were collecting, and they sold it at flea markets, and then all of a sudden somebody bumped into somebody, and he just didn't give up, and next thing you know, he was taking care of Metallica. I mean, there's some crazy stuff. But what is it in New Jersey? There's a fighting little spirit going on.
Well, also thinking about the story of Kenny Laguna and Joan Jett. Kenny had a successful career in bubblegum music when he was younger, and now he meets Joan and they can't get arrested. What does Kenny do? He puts out a record on his own record label with Joan, and they sell the vinyl from the back of his car. And one thing leads to another. And the marketplace won't lie. The marketplace will tell you if you're doing the right thing. And people responded. And people responded to John Bon Jovi when he got a chance. And people responded to Scott when he got a chance. And it became, as we said in the movie, it became viral, decades before the internet ever happened. People got behind this station and rallied behind it. And I think it's John Bell said, the audience became our advertising agency. I mean, they were.
That was amazing.
I mean, how can that ever happen, right? But if you think about it, that's the quintessential only in New York moment. People get behind
don't want to ask for help. There's that thing in business. You have this pride and ego, like, okay, I've got a business, and maybe it's like, oh shit, what am I doing? But then he just went like, I don't care. This is what's going on. Help me. And he wasn't like, oh, help me. It was like, get off your ass and do something about it to everybody, which was amazing. What was it like meeting
where
him?
I came from, right?
Yeah. What was it like meeting him?
So it's really interesting. I'll preface that by saying my interest in music never coincided with Z100 when I was a musician or growing up, right? So I wasn't so aware of Z100 until I got invited to go backstage at the Garden and work with them. So to me, Z100 always was. I never thought about when it started or its origins. So I literally knew the name Scott Shannon in passing, and only as like the PLJ guy, because they did a lot of commercials, but I had no knowledge of him. And so when I got a call to work on a film, and about his era, him, the station, I was meeting someone in the Hall of Fame, but I heard some things, but I didn't have one position or the other. And he is so real, that after meeting him, I had no choice but to say yes. I wasn't going to let anyone else do the film, because he's, first of all, he's a musicologist. I mean, he could talk Buddy Holly, he could talk any period of pop music from the 50s right through to today. So he always stays current, but he knows music. He himself was a musician. He did some singles, which I wanted to put in the movie, but that's a story for another day. But Scott loves music, and that was the common denominator that and music people, as you both know, music people can sniff out other music people, because when it's like no business like show business. If you're genuine, right? And so Scott and I kind of met there about a love of music, and all of the people that were so kind to be in the film. We met them as musicians, and we talked about Z100, and when we talked about Scott as a music person and the love of music, and particularly Clive Davis talks a lot about that, and what a quintessential music person is he.
Wow, yeah.
So it's really interesting. It's a real. Is it about Scott? Yes, but it's also about that love of. It's a David or David and Goliath story. I hope it inspires people to not give up, especially now.
That's what I thought. Yeah, it's for entrepreneurs. All these people right now that are changing jobs and getting like, I'm going to go for my dream. I'm going to go for my, business, even if they have to do it part-time. I think it was a great story about, like we were saying, don't ever give up. But I think it's a really good. It's a good business.
It's a good message. It's a message. And it's about opportunity. And, when it comes like right in your face and you don't see it, I don't know what to say to you. You got to jump on it.
Yeah, just don't be afraid to fail. I mean, look what both of you are doing. Look what I'm doing. It's like, there was no guarantee, right? There's no you just got to keep going.
It's only on you. It's on you to do what you got to do, But you are awake through that video, like the documentary. You are awake. He wakes you up, and all the stories from everyone. I want to see the all 4 hours, but I understand you have to cut the babies. I mean, that's really hard. Do you save the babies for other projects that are possible down the road?
Here's the greatest question, and thank you for asking. So after the 4-hour cut, we had a 2-hour cut. That was amazing. And one of our business partners, Elvis Duran, said, because it was worst to first in that era. And I started to bridge into another worst to first, a more modern story, And Elvis said, I would suggest this solely be about Scott. And that's the kind of person he is. He didn't want the spotlight on him. He didn't want to steal any of Scott's spotlight. I don't know if steal is the right word, but, and I looked at him and I said, of course. And that's why you have, that's why teams make movies, because they are your babies. And we had, so, hopefully everyone loves it enough that we get to do Worst to First, the sequel, because there's another story there. And it's amazing. It's not Scott's story, but the link between it is the later program director, Tom Pullman, who literally went back to Scott Shannon's playbook, followed it, and next thing you know, 3 years later, they did it again, so it's a really amazing story that also going back to Scott's love of music and, figuring out the demographic that you're appealing to and making sure that you're serving them. It's not catering to them, it's serving them in the manner that you wish they wish to be entertained. If you're teaching Latin, don't walk in the class and teach French.
Exactly.
People want to be entertained and they want hit music. So give them that. And if they want another type of music, there's another station to go to.
Exactly.
You can't be everything to everybody, right? But you can, if you're a strong brand and you have a strong voice, bet the ranch and go for it. Right?
Otherwise, what do you know? You're always going to regret, and you're not going to enjoy life.
Exactly.
It is kind of like a story, like a SNL story. You got to think about their ups and downs. And
brilliant.
And if you don't have the downs, the story's kind of lost. I mean, if it was all happy the whole time,
then
there's no story. People and Americans love to root for the underdog, don't we? And I think that's part of his success is that Americans want to help the underdog. They do.
Well, think about it. We're all going to, fortunately or unfortunately, hit rock bottom at some point. Either you reach for your dream at the moment, you attain it, and then it vanishes and you fall, right? That great height, or things go wrong, the tragedy strikes, you're going to hit rock bottom. The stories I'm interested in telling and what I'm hoping to put out in my personal life is when you hit rock bottom, you have two choices, you stay in the hole or you rise. And those that rise, they rise with their own unique truth and a sense of armor and weaponry that carries them up and elevates them. And those are the stories you want to tell, because we're all going to be there. And, we all need help. I mean, every one of us. I mean, no one goes through life 1, 2, 3, someone said to me, everyone has their own shit, right? And it's how you deal with it that determines the type of human you are. And in this film, whomever you look at that we've covered, they're all people that rose.
They're amazing. It's an amazing story. What's your next film that's going to come out?
I am talking to someone right now about something. Well, there's 3 we have 2 in development that are narratives that I hope to do with my partner, Paul Heyman. And one, he did most of the writing, one I did most of the writing, and we're working with some people that hopefully we're going to have some announcements soon that we're really excited about. And there's one I can't talk about, but I'm really excited because it would be a multi-part doc series on an institution in New York that has been around since the 1920s, hint, hint. And when I met the owner, he understood that each one of those epochs had their own unique story, so I hope to be announcing soon the development of this series with a room. But we're working with, we have our own agency and we're storytellers. We're working a lot on Broadway. Last season, we got to work on the Tony Awards campaign for Moulin Rouge, and we worked a lot with Phantom of the Opera. We just got asked to work on a Pulitzer Prize winning show, and it's about music. And so we're the lucky ones.
You're rocking and rolling.
He's rocking it.
And if you love what you do, you really are never working. You just and our whole attitude is, how can we help? How can we help tell a story? How can we help inspire, or if it's a startup or whatever, how can we help their story be told, in a manner that is translated for people to consume it and understand it and hopefully be inspired. Because when I grew up, I lived in my head. You know, the neighborhood I grew up in was so violent. Outside the door, I didn't want to even deal with it. So, you know, thank God for Stan Lee and thank God for Shakespeare and music, because that's what got me through. So I lived in my head and used to visualize, you know, being in that world.
Wow. Now look at this. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. It's awesome.
We get to paint our own picture, so to speak.
Oh, that's the way to go, man. You know, that's where the arts really help. I mean, everything you just, saying, you know, when you're going through stuff, it's always the arts that gets us through, no matter what it is. It is.
Time immemorial. Yes.
That's really, to me, that's really the history of mankind, is the arts. Because that's where people actually express what's going on from their point of view, and that's what's real.
Right. That's what's real. That's
what's real.
And you can discover in their truth, whether it's comedy, you know, some of the best, every Shakespearean play has comedy, right? It's comedy and tragedy. And through that, you learn the truth always. And music's the same thing. Why is it that in any autocratic regime in the world, what do they cut first usually? They usually cut music. There's
music,
the arts, anything to do with the arts. You know, and it happens in schools across this country, which is really depressing. And kids need it. They need that program, you know. It helps so many, but I think your story is inspiring. Z100 is inspiring. So everybody get out and do it. Thank you for joining us. I want to give everyone the dates again. Out on February 11th. And so, I mean, that's right now. So go get it. Gunpowdersky.com is the website. Again, it is go worst to first. You go get it. It's on Google Play, Vudu, Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, iTunes, on cable like Spectrum, Comcast, Charter, Cox, Frontier, DirecTV, and more. So go get it. We want to give a shout out to our sponsor, which is the National Parks Arts Foundation. They are awesome. They create really cool programs for artists. You could be a filmmaker, a writer, a poet, a musician, a painter, a photographer. And what they do is they have programs where you get to be an artist in residence for a full month in a national park, like Hawaii, Volcanoes National Park, Chaco Canyon, your own island, and the Dry Tortugas in Florida. I mean, come on. So it's really cool. So nationalparksartsfoundation.org is the website, and ours is bigblendradio.com.
Lisa, I'm sorry about that. Sorry, step on you, but Lisa, Nancy, I had one more thing. I'd love to hear from people. So please, I encourage everyone, if you see the film, and I hope you do, and I hope you enjoy it, but I'm really interested in people's opinions and what they receive from it, you know, myself as an artist. So please go on IMDb, please go on Rotten Tomatoes, which is the holy grail, and leave a review, because, you know, I'd love to hear professional reviews like yours, but I also want to hear from the viewers. And so please leave a review, good, bad, or indifferent. We learn from them all. And I thank you so much for having me on board today.
Thank you so much. Don't be a stranger.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll see you.